Hey folks, how's it going? Sociopathic Otter here with some more Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. This should be a fun one. Alright, we've got a more upbeat level coming up, and I've got the UFO power-up, so this is really exciting. If I get to keep my power-up and get an Actum Tomato, that would be awesome. Wonderful. Sometimes I struggle with sound effects. I don't necessarily make comics or anything, so it's not like I would need to spell out sound effects, but after reading certain comic books like Calvin and Hobbes, it got me thinking, you know, how exactly are you supposed to vocalize that? Alright, got my hammer back, which is awesome. So the question is it safe to come through here? It is, apparently, because Kirby can just breathe, and his breath is so noxious it works as a weapon. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining, but at the same time, that is a little suspect. Alright, let's continue through here. I especially like how Kirby's hammer has this little star insignia on the end of it, because not only does it remind me of King Dedede, but also it adds this very Kirby, very personal touch to his hammer. It's a cute little detail in a cute little game, so I'm glad to see these kind of visual cues remind me of the game's general tone. Goodness gracious, Kirby swims so slow. And has a hard time going through doors, apparently. Okay, excellent. Can I go through here? Will it let me descend? No, I guess not. Alright. So, I'm not going to risk going down there should it drop me into the abyss. So I'm just going to make my way through here, which I think is the way I'm supposed to go. Okay. That's interesting. Definitely not what I was expecting. I will have to check that door out later. Wonderful. So now if I could make my way through here, then I can end off this level and see just what that door is. I certainly don't go out of my way to unlock tiny little details. I'm not a 100%er by nature, but... Oh, it's a warp star. Okay, interesting. Good to know. But it just really makes me wonder the depths to which people will go to actually 100% a game. I am not exactly a fan of this boss. I'm not a fan of moving stages in general. For example, there's one stage in Super Smash Bros. Brawl where the stage moves with the boss. Wow, that was remarkably quick. Apparently the hammer is super OP for this boss. But in moving stages in general, it just kind of gives me this sense of unease because I'm supposed to keep track of the moving stage and my coordinates at the same time. It can be a little disorienting. Alright, right now we're in Orange Ocean, which looks pretty cool. I'm a fan of the orange kind of atmosphere. It kind of reminds me of how Pokemon Red kind of tints the game red, and Pokemon Blue does the same thing. That's only in the Game Boy Color remake. Oh, Phan Phan's here again. That's only in the Game Boy Color remake. In the original Game Boy version, it's not like that at all. But nonetheless, the aesthetic, or the tone, color aesthetic, and the way that it matches up is really, really pleasant to me. Okay, enough talking. Let me try to beat Phan Phan here. So, this fight is kind of tricky because there's a pool at Phan Phan's feet. And he also just chucks you with his trunk. Okay, that's it. I'm dead. I can take some time to talk about the water here. So, the water makes it hard for me to throw the apple because it just plunks in the water rather than actually going in a horizontal line the way I would want it to. This is brutal. Alright. Let's see if I can get thrown, apparently. I just get thrown against the stage again and again until I die. Well, at least this will make for a good time lapse. I am more than okay with that. The one thing I'm very concerned about is that if I die here, then Phan Phan might respawn. So, let's hope that's not the case. Duck. Okay, nice. Brilliant hitbox detection by me to actually make the ball sprite... Whoa, that UFO is so cool. To actually make the ball sprite not get caught. Not get caught in the hitbox there, that is. Although it does have more useful properties. Wonderful. That Maxim tomato was necessary. And I'm so glad I got it. I may as well get this extra life, because I've seen just how easy it is to die. And after that, I'm ready to proceed. Wonderful. My parasol will be specifically useful here, as opposed to just any general area, because of the way I need to parkour to make it over to that door. Alright. I really like the lights in the background, actually, just because they seem kind of like shooting stars to me, or at the very least, some kind of astrophysical black hole phenomenon. I really like it. This is just a random train of thought, but I was playing Legend of Zelda earlier, and wow, Kirby really waddles slowly when he's swallowing something. I was playing Legend of Zelda earlier, the original one, and it struck me just how much games have changed recently. I thought it was a pretty interesting insight, so I'm gonna include it here. So, back in the 90s, that's a pretty nice BoJack Horseman segue, right? Back in the 90s, I feel like gaming, or even before that, when the NES was a thing, around the, 70s, 80s? My history isn't super great. But back in those days, gaming was different. You had, your NES, your SNES, whatever, and you just kind of sat and grinded at games. And if you died, you died. That was part of the fun and part of the mystery. Nowadays, there's so much selection for games, and there's so many things to experience that people actually have legitimate fears of missing out if they don't experience games. Like, I've seen lists on Reddit, for example, top 10 JRPGs that you must play in your lifetime, right? And of course, those kinds of things are silly, but they do constitute very real, very genuine human fears of missing out. And it's just interesting to me how gaming has changed. Back in the days of Pokemon Red or Legend of Zelda or whatever, gaming was about going on an experience and having a unique journey where you could grow as a person, develop some really cool ideas, and see some really cool sights. And that essence of gaming has changed. It isn't... Okay, I was wondering why it wouldn't let me go up. It isn't intrinsically worse today, of course. It's just different. And it really strikes me as different because games are different today. I feel like they're more like interactive movies, in the sense that it's more about the general story and experience in terms of plot and ideas and characters, more than it is in terms of the player's personal journey. More than the player's experiencing a new lens of human ideas and philosophies through the game. As an example, in Earthbound... Oh goodness gracious, I have to learn not to swallow those things. In Earthbound, that was a very nice slide by me, the player is actually sighted. Okay, I died, so I can give that idea a little more clarity. In Earthbound, you actually input your name into the game, and you are an instrumental part of the ending. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't played, because I think it's a particularly powerful ending. No JRPG ending has influenced me quite like Earthbound because of that, but the deeply personal way that Earthbound intertwines the player with the plot, I haven't seen happen in any video game before or since, maybe discounting Nier Automata because of the crazy stuff it does in terms of breaking the fourth wall. But, kind of capping this general tangent, it's just crazy to me how games have gone from that kind of personal journey that we see in Pokemon Red, where Oak gives you your first Pokemon, that we see in Earthbound when you actually help the main characters, and it's gone to this kind of Uncharted, The Last of Us feel, where you're almost experiencing an interactive book more than using your imagination to fill in the gaps. So, kind of interesting how you can see the game philosophies of the time and the game limitations of the time play into gameplay. Anyway, let's get right into the third level. So, it turns out I can't attack the cannons, that's good to know. It would sure be funny if they were destroyable, because then I wouldn't have all these annoying obstacles in my way, and I could actually talk even more as I make my way through these levels. I do not remember this boss. Okay, so I suppose I could beat him the vanilla way, by just eating the projectiles and spitting them back, but this boss seems very out of place. Just the way the model is placed in with all these other enemies, it just feels a little bit unorthodox. So, interesting choice, that's for sure. Okay. Wow, I missed that one. Very nice. Good timing. Alright, there we go. One more hit should do it. So I guess this boss is more of like a mini-boss, then. Alright, good choice by me, because I just so happened to time it well enough. Okay, I don't think that hammer is actually randomized, because you get that in the vanilla game too, and of course he was just using a hammer. So, pretty cool that I got that power up though. I quite like the hammer ability, so no worries. I also really like the sun in the background there, because, I don't know, the warm color palette just looks really pleasing to the eye. Great. How do I... Okay, when there are multiple doors here, that always confuses me. I guess I can start with this door and not get anything for it. Let's try this door. And the one-up's on the other side. Again, not really sure how that's supposed to work, but that's okay. Okay, ooh, this flame bot right here gives me a nice little ability. I love Beam. I've mentioned its Marthiness in the ability several times, but every single time it kind of amazes me how I can actually apply Super Smash Bros. Melee spacing to a game that has nothing to do with fighting and or competitive level spacing. And that's that. That's an interesting segue into another level, or is it another part of this level? Alright. Well, regardless, interesting way to move from one part of the level to the next. I must say, it is really interesting how you observe the progression of platformers from all the way from Super Mario Bros. For the NES, and you go all the way to games nowadays. Like I saw the other day, Super Mario 3D World for the Wii U, right? So those games are so much more detailed graphically, and so much more nuanced in terms of... Goodness gracious. And so much more nuanced in terms of how they deliver their levels, but they may not have the creativity that the pixelated versions of platformers back in the day used to have. So it really depends. As a complete tangent, or I guess it's not necessarily a complete tangent because I was talking about platformers earlier, I actually kind of wanted to segue into how RPGs have changed over the past couple of years because I have some pertinent thoughts on those. So, as I've said before, Pokemon Red and Blue are games that I actually deeply appreciate just because they convey this sense of imagination and wonder. When you start playing Pokemon Red and Blue, you get whisked away to this magical world of Pokemon where you, as the player, get the chance to explore and create and learn. And I think that organic experience is really, really wonderful, and that, to me, is what makes the core essence of games. This vibe has definitely changed nowadays in the later Pokemon games, as we see in Sword and Shield at the very bottom. So yes, the graphics do look a lot nicer, and there are certain aesthetic things that have changed, perhaps for the better, but I'm actually not very much a fan of these changes. Pokemon Sword and Shield have implemented all sorts of things like increased dialogue and increased cutscenes and places where you can't go because of arbitrary and artificial roadblocks in a way that really annoys the player rather than seeming like a natural extension of the world. So, like I was saying, I just died. That's not actually what I was saying, but that's alright. So, like I was saying, I've been giving a lot of thought to the difference between retro gaming and more contemporary gaming more recently. Because I've been playing Legend of Zelda, like the original one, and it struck me just how different it is from pretty much every game on the market nowadays. In that game, it's all about the adventure and all about the player learning in the unique and often hostile world that their avatar is set in, right? So in The Legend of Zelda, you're given no NPC diction whatsoever. You're given no advice whatsoever. You're supposed to make your way through that world, do whatever you need to survive, and you're given no direction whatsoever. But there's a sense of wonder and a sense of charm, and I hate to use this specific phrasing, but there is a sense of achievement too. EA may have ruined that specific concept, but I don't think it's any less real for that. Hey, this is cool. The parasol gives me, like, sunscreen protection. Except instead of protecting me from the sun, it's against those exploding coconuts. This section is kind of fun. I don't think this is what the game designers intended, but it is a nice little use of the parasol's unique hitbox detection, or lack thereof, because Kirby actually doesn't get hurt. Okay, let's head into the 5th level here. And we've got this very nice looking background. Reminds me kind of Zeal from Chrono Trigger, which I don't know why it does, because it uses cool colors instead of warm colors, and it's meant to inspire awe instead of terror, but for some reason my brain made that association. Maybe it's the music, maybe it's the tone, maybe it's some combination of the three, who knows. Great. The maximum tornado is definitely needed. Okay, let's go through here. Oh my goodness, I always try to attack those things without realizing that it's going to bite me later. So that tends to hurt. That's a great example of the game designers kind of intentionally misleading the player into learning a specific set of mechanics, a specific set of axioms in terms of how to play the game, and then immediately flip-flopping that. Or, I guess it's not immediate, because it does happen in a couple worlds after the player gets accustomed to the game. But nonetheless, it is a nice little mix-up of the routine that I appreciate. Oh my goodness, I've been dropping power-ups left and right. And dropping health left and right. That's pretty funny. Alright, so do I have to press A? Do I press B? How does this work? Okay, well that's no good, I guess. I'm going to ignore that. So this area of the game is actually one of my very favorites. I don't know what it is. It's between the music and the wonderful purple nebulous stars I see in the background, and of course, whatever reminds me of Zeal from Chrono Trigger is already pretty cool. So, just for a little context, Zeal is like this heavenly paradise in Chrono Trigger where the main characters go, and it appears to be this erudite heaven where people can learn and enjoy themselves and generally drive progress forward without necessarily having to resort to the nefarious things that we humans tend to do. And so that kind of calm, melodious vibe kind of rings true in this location, which is part of why I like it so much. Also, I think it's notable to talk about the little cannon there that I got stuck on. So I was curious, and I actually Googled it. Kirby needs some sort of explosive ability for that cannon to actually work, and then he just goes shooting up, like he's a kinematics object or something like that. And so, by using that cannon, Kirby can soar above the enemies and make it to the end a little quicker. Nice little detail that I think cements the kind of care and effort that the game designers put into this game. And let's go ahead and finish up this level, apparently. Wow. Oh man, I got pretty close to first place there. That's pretty exciting. Out of as many jumps as I've taken in this game, I've only ever gotten first place once, I think. Nothing special, of course, but there is a certain moral satisfaction in doing that. Speaking of moral satisfaction, I think that's actually a pretty great segue into this ending card, so I'm pretty impressed by how smooth that was. Overall, I think I've made some pretty good progress this episode, so we'll go ahead and call it a part. I went all the way through Orange Ocean, quite a few levels there, and also fought Phan Phan, which, oh boy, that made for quite a montage, and also kind of reflected over Chrono Trigger and Zeal and some Pokemon games and how they've kind of shifted in terms of their aesthetic, their presentation, and their general values. So, quite a productive part. I'm very happy with that, and if you guys liked it too, maybe consider liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, and all that jazz. If you didn't like it, that's cool too. Leave me a comment saying, hey, do this or do that. Those are always fun to get as well. So that should be pretty much it. Peace.